I arrived early to my own family's Christmas party. But I was the only one not in on the secret. I stopped cold in the hallway when I heard the cheering. It was my husband, Ryan, his voice loud and proud as he made the announcement. His mistress, Chloe, was pregnant, and everyone celebrated. They thought I was the same naive girl they'd fooled for a decade, but they had no idea what I would uncover in just 3 weeks. My name is Clara Ellison. I'm 29, and until recently, I was a marketing director at a major tech firm in Chicago. From the outside, my life looked perfect, polished to a high sheen, a beautiful, historic townhouse on Lakeshore Drive. A stable marriage to a man I'd known since childhood. A fast-track career that colleagues envied. They thought I had it all. But they had no idea what I'd been through to get there. They didn't know the price I had paid for that apparent stability. My life changed last year on Christmas Eve. That was the night the blindfold, woven from years of well-intentioned lies and my own desperate need for connection, was finally ripped away. The betrayal had been there for years, right under my nose. I simply hadn't been able to see it. Let me rewind a bit. I need you to understand how I arrived at that moment. I've known Ryan Vance since the day I was born. Our parents were close friends, the kind who spent weekends together, took vacations, and celebrated every birthday. My parents were Ryan's godparents. And his parents, Diane and Robert Vance, whom I affectionately called Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert, were mine. It was the kind of friendship that seemed indestructible, built over decades. We grew up playing in the same parks. We saw each other at weekend barbecues, birthday parties, and holidays. He was a part of my life even before I understood what that meant, but our lives were different, very different. My parents had money. My father, David Ellison, was a successful real estate developer. My mother, Sarah Ellison, was a noted interior designer. I attended the best private schools in the city. I had piano lessons, ballet, French tutoring. We traveled through Europe on vacation. We lived in that large, historic townhouse on the Upper East Side. Ryan, on the other hand, attended public schools. His family lived in a simple house in a middle-class neighborhood of Naperville. Uncle Robert worked as a supervisor at a logistics depot. Aunt Diane was an administrator at a dental office. They lived comfortably, but without luxuries. At the time, I didn't understand those differences. We were just kids playing together. But looking back now, I can see the signs. The way Aunt Diane's eyes would linger on my mother's jewelry. A flicker of something more than just admiration. How Uncle Robert would make comments about our house, our cars, our trips, always with a smile, always disguised as a joke. "Must be nice, David," he'd say, clapping my father on the back, his laugh just a little too loud. There was something there, a sting of bitterness that I was too young to recognize. When I was 16, my parents were killed in a car accident. It was a rainy October night. They were returning from an anniversary dinner when a truck lost control on the highway. There are no words to describe that time. Even now, 13 years later, a part of me remains paralyzed at the exact moment the police knocked on the door at 2 a.m. After the funeral, Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert moved into my house. They came to live with me, to take care of me, so I wouldn't be alone. I was a minor, an orphan, completely lost in the echoing silence of the massive townhouse. They took me in. They were kind. They made sure to tell me that I would always have a family. At that moment, that saved me. Or, so I thought. They managed my parents' estate until I turned 21. When I came of legal age, I discovered my parents had left me a considerable portfolio, 3 other apartments downtown, and the townhouse where we lived, all completely paid off. My parents had invested well. They had planned a future they never got to live with me. Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert helped me with all the paperwork. They explained every detail. They were patient with my questions, treating me like a daughter, not a burden. When I turned 21 and could technically take charge of everything alone, they sat me down in the study, their expressions full of gentle concern. They asked if they could continue living in the townhouse with me. They said it would be better for everyone if we stayed together, that I shouldn't be alone in such a big place. I didn't think twice. They were practically my family. They had cared for me during the worst years of my life. Letting them stay was the least I could do. Generosity, gratitude, naivety. 3 words that perfectly define who I was back then. Chapter 2. The First Stone. Ryan and I started dating when I was 21. It felt natural, almost inevitable. Everyone expected it. "You're perfect for each other," Aunt Diane would coo. "You grew up together. It's like destiny." He was attentive, affectionate. He seemed to understand me. He knew my history, my pain, my fears. He knew the hollow places my parents had left behind. Or so I believed. 2 years later, we married. Aunt Diane helped me organize everything. We chose the dress together. She came with me to fittings, her eyes brimming with tears. She gave her opinion on the flowers, the decor, the invitations. "Your mother, Sarah, would love being here doing this with you," she told me several times, her voice thick with emotion, and I believed her. I believed she genuinely missed my mother, that she was filling that role out of pure love. On the wedding day, Uncle Robert walked me down the aisle. He took my arm, his hand warm and steady over mine. He looked at me with that fatherly smile and said, "Your father would be so proud of you today, Clara." I cried. I thought it was beautiful. I thought it was family love. And I allowed it. I embraced it. Because I trusted them. Because I believed it was real. Ryan and I moved into one of the apartments I had inherited downtown. Ryan said he wanted us to build our life together, on our own, and that we didn't need the big townhouse. At first, it made sense. I worked a lot. I was focused on my career at the tech firm. He had started working as a financial analyst, operating from home, supposedly investing in stocks and day trading. At least that's what I believed he did. His office was a fortress of blinking monitors and financial jargon I didn't understand, and I felt proud he was building something for us. The other 2 apartments were rented out. Ryan offered to handle everything. "You already work so much, Clara," he'd say, massaging my shoulders. "Let me manage the properties. That way, you can focus on your career, and I'll handle this side of things. It's the least I can do." It seemed like a fair, even loving arrangement. He sent me monthly reports, simple spreadsheets that showed profits and reinvestments. He said he was reinvesting the profits, multiplying our wealth. I never questioned him. I trusted him completely. After all, why would I distrust him? He was my husband. He had grown up with me. His parents were my godparents. They lived in my family's house. We were family. 2 weeks before Christmas, Ryan came home with a document. It was a power of attorney, prepared by an attorney who, he said, worked with his family. "It's just to make things easier, honey," he explained, smiling in that way that always reassured me. "That way, I can renew rental contracts without having to bother you at work, handle bank matters, property registration issues. You'll be free to focus only on your job." I took the document and skimmed it quickly. Legal jargon always gave me a headache. "I'll read it carefully later," I replied, setting it on my desk. I saw something flash across his face. It was fast, almost imperceptible, a clench of his jaw, a different glint in his eyes, but he quickly smiled again. "Sure, no problem, whenever you have time." I put the POA in a desk drawer and honestly forgot about it. Work was chaos. My company had a major project to close before the end of the year, and I was coordinating the entire team. The company Christmas party was scheduled for the afternoon of December 24th. It started at 6 p.m., and I had agreed with Ryan that I would leave around 10 p.m. to head to his parents' place, my townhouse, for the traditional family Christmas Eve dinner. It was always like that. Every Christmas Eve, the townhouse that had belonged to my parents was filled with Ryan's relatives, his parents' friends, people I barely knew. I always went. I always smiled. I always appreciated being included, because I still believed I was lucky to have this family. That night, the company party was a little dull. Repetitive conversations, music too loud, drunk people discussing New Year's resolutions. Around 8 p.m., I decided to leave early and surprise Ryan. Arrive before planned, help with the final preparations, maybe steal a quiet moment with him before the chaos. I drove toward the townhouse, listening to Christmas carols on the radio. It was cold, with a light snow dusting the Chicago streets. The streets were decorated with lights blinking in every window, that atmosphere of forced happiness that Christmas always brings. When I parked in front of the house, I realized it was packed, cars everywhere, lights on in every room, music and laughter spilling onto the street. The party was already in full swing. I walked in the front door without knocking. I hung my coat in the foyer, breathing in the familiar scent of pine and roasted food, and headed toward the living room. The voices grew louder as I approached. I guess there were about 20 people laughing, celebrating. And then I heard Ryan's voice from the living room, clear and radiant. "Chloe is pregnant. We're going to have a son." The world stopped. I stood there in the hallway, partially hidden by the wall. No one had seen me arrive. From my angle, I could see the entire room. Ryan was in the center, his arm around Chloe, his ex-girlfriend from college, someone I'd been told was just a friend. And there she was, smiling with a hand on her stomach, receiving hugs and kisses from everyone. Aunt Diane was crying with joy. Uncle Robert was applauding, shouting. Toasts were raised, family friends congratulated them, saying things about how handsome the baby would be. I felt my legs give way. I leaned against the wall to keep from falling. Someone in the crowd shouted, "But what about Clara? Does she know yet?" The silence that followed lasted barely 3 seconds, but it felt like an eternity. Ryan gave a somewhat forced smile. "Not yet. I need to sort out a few things first. Some paperwork, but I'll tell her at the right moment, so." No one here says a word when she arrives. Everyone laughed. My heart pounded. Paperwork? He meant the power of attorney. There was a murmur of understanding in the room. Some people exchanged knowing glances. Aunt Diane nodded, as if approving the strategy. Uncle Robert raised his glass to the future, and everyone toasted. In that moment, everything began to make sense. The way they reacted, those looks, that charged silence, everyone there knew something I didn't. There was a secret, a conspiracy, and that power of attorney was the final piece of the plan. My stomach churned. It wasn't possible. I had to be hearing things. But Aunt Diane, my godmother, my second mother, said loud and clear, "Finally, my son. After so many years, we are going to reclaim what is rightfully ours." And then I understood everything. Every smile, every gesture of affection, every word of comfort. It had all been a lie. A vast, elaborate lie spanning years. It wasn't love. It never was. It was a scam. I turned around, grabbed my coat, and slipped out of the house in silence, as quietly as I had entered. No one saw me. No one noticed. I got into the car, closed the door, and only then did the full reality hit me. I started to cry. It wasn't a melodramatic movie cry, but a silent, painful sob that burned my chest and throat. Tears streamed down my face as I tried to process what I had just witnessed. My marriage was a farce. My husband had a pregnant mistress. Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert, my godparents, the people who had raised me, were involved in a plot to steal my inheritance. And everyone, absolutely everyone in that room, knew and was complicit. I drove back to the apartment on autopilot. I don't remember the road along Lakeshore Drive. I don't remember the snow-covered trees or the frozen lake. I only remember crying and driving, crying and driving. When I got home, I wiped my tears, washed my face, and looked in the mirror. I barely recognized the person staring back. I looked smaller, more fragile, lost. My phone vibrated. It was a message from Ryan asking where I was. I took a deep breath. The marketing director in me, the part that lived for strategy and crisis management, began to surface through the fog of pain. "I decided to stay at the company party," I typed. My fingers steady. "It's more lively than I thought. A few of the VPs are here, good networking." "A plausible lie," he responded almost immediately. "Okay, have fun. See you in 2 weeks. We're heading to the Bahamas early tomorrow." Of course. The annual trip. Since we married, his family went to visit relatives for Christmas and stayed until the first week of January. They always said it was a standing family reunion. They knew New Year's was always chaos at my firm, closing Q4 projects and planning Q1 launches. Every year, I stayed behind while they went on vacation. I never questioned it. After all, it was their family time. I just replied, "Okay. Have a good trip." He sent a "Merry Christmas. Love you," with a heart emoji. I didn't respond. I locked my phone screen and tossed it onto the sofa. I sat on the living room couch in the dark and let the anger grow, pushing out the grief. I realized one thing right then. The crying was over. There was no longer room for pain, sadness, or tears. There was only room for strategy. They thought I was an idiot. They thought I would always be that 6-year-old orphaned, lost girl, grateful for a family, trusting eternally, signing any paper, never questioning anything. They were wrong. I had grown up. I became a marketing director because I was good at planning, organizing, anticipating problems, and creating solutions. I coordinated teams, managed crises, and made tough decisions every day. And at that moment, sitting in the darkness of my living room, I made the most important decision of my life. They wanted to play. We would play. But this time, by my rules, I stayed up all night. I didn't sleep. I just sat there planning. First, I made a mental list of everything I knew. Ryan was cheating on me with his ex, Chloe. Chloe was pregnant. His entire family and friends knew and supported it. The power of attorney was the final piece of a plan to transfer my assets to his family. I hadn't signed anything yet. This last point was crucial. I still had control of everything. I was still the owner of my properties, my accounts. Ryan had no legal power over anything. As long as I didn't sign that document, he couldn't do anything. I spent Christmas Day planning, thinking through every detail, every move I would need to make. I made mental lists, drafted strategies, anticipated problems. This is how I worked as a marketing director, and this is how I was going to handle this too. The next day, December 26th, I would put it all into practice. When the sun rose, I knew exactly what my first step would be. At 9 a.m., I called the lawyer who had handled my parents' affairs, Mr. Davies. He had always told me that if I ever needed anything, I only had to reach out. "Mr. Davies," I said, my voice firm, "this is Clara Ellison, David and Sarah Ellison's daughter. I urgently need to speak with you." He must have detected something in my voice because he didn't ask questions. He just said, "Come to my office, now." I showered, dressed, gathered all the property documents I had, the power of attorney Ryan had given me, and drove downtown. Mr. Davies's office was in an old brick building in the financial district. I had walked those stairs since I was a child, always accompanied by my father. It was a place that smelled of old paper and strong coffee. He greeted me with a hug. He was a man in his 70s with completely white hair and reading glasses hanging around his neck. He had been my father's attorney for over 20 years. "Sit down, Clara. Tell me what happened." I told him everything. The announcement at the party, the POA, the suspicion about the asset transfer. I spoke non-stop for almost 40 minutes. He listened in silence, taking notes, frowning at certain points. When I finished, he took off his glasses and rubbed his eyes. "Clara, I need to tell you something." My heart pounded. "What is it?" "Your father and Robert Vance were partners in a business many years ago. Your father's first real estate venture. It did very well at first, but then it hit a rough patch. Robert wanted to retire and sell his share. Your father bought him out for a fair price. He assumed all the risk. Robert took the money and left." He paused, taking a sip of coffee. 2 years later, your father managed to turn the situation around. The company grew exponentially. That's how your family became wealthy. But I don't think Robert ever got over it. Your father told me this story years ago. By his account, Robert had accepted it well at the time. The families remained friends. The children grew up together. But now, seeing what's happening, I believe there was always resentment. Robert and Diane probably always looked at your family's life with bitterness. The class difference became very evident over the years, didn't it? You had everything. And they struggled financially. And when your parents died, you were a vulnerable teenager with a considerable inheritance. To resentful people, It must have looked like an opportunity. He looked at me seriously. Looking back now, with everything you've told me, it's clear that friendship always had a fragile foundation. The resentment over the business sale was likely never truly overcome, and you, Clara, became the perfect target. I felt as if a bucket of cold water had been thrown over me. So that was it. The resentment had always been there, hidden, and I never saw it. Nobody saw it, he clarified. Your father certainly didn't suspect anything, or he would have taken precautions. I closed my eyes. My parents never imagined that friendship concealed so much envy, so much greed, and now I was paying the price for the naivety of all of us. And this power of attorney? I asked, pushing the document across the table. Mr. Davies put on his glasses and read it carefully. It took him nearly 15 minutes. He flipped pages, reread sections, made annotations. Finally, he placed the paper on the table and looked at me gravely. This gives Ryan full authority over absolutely everything you own. He could sell the properties, transfer them, create mortgages, take out loans in your name. Everything. With this document signed, you would lose complete control of your estate. It would be very difficult to reverse. And the properties? I asked. If we divorce, does he have a right to half? Mr. Davies smiled for the first time since I arrived. No. Everything you inherited is separate property. Under the law, inheritances received before or during the marriage do not enter into the community or marital property division. If you divorce today, Ryan takes nothing, absolutely nothing. Unless, I murmured, I voluntarily transfer the assets to his name. Exactly, he said. It was the only legal way they had to get what they wanted. Chapter 4. Setting the board. I opened the folder I had brought and placed all the rental contracts on the table. I need you to review this. Ryan has managed my properties for years. He says he reinvests the money, but I've never seen real proof. I want to know where that money has been going. Mr. Davies spent the next 2 hours analyzing every document, every contract, every bank statement I had. He made calls, checked records, cross-referenced information. When he finished, his expression was grim. Clara, I am sorry to tell you this, but the rent money is being deposited into Ryan's personal accounts, not joint or business accounts. He has been appropriating all the income from your properties. I took a deep breath. I expected it, but hearing the confirmation still hurt. And there's more, he continued. One of the apartments has no proof of rent payment whatsoever. There's a contract but no record of financial transactions. Someone is living there for free. Chloe, I responded, my voice flat. His mistress, Mr. Davies nodded. Most likely. What do you want to do now? Number 4-1. First, I said, the marketing director taking full charge. We hire a private investigator. I want to know where every single dollar has gone. I want everything documented. I want proof. And I want them out of my life. He smiled. A sad smile, but with a flicker of pride. Your father would be very proud of the woman you've become. In the following days, I acted quickly and silently. Following Mr. Davies's instructions, I hired a trusted real estate management company to take over the administration of my apartments. I signed contracts granting specific, limited powers, very different from the general POA. Ryan wanted and instructed them to notify all tenants immediately. Starting in January, all rents were to be paid directly to the management company. New contracts would be issued. Tenants had 1 week to sign, or eviction proceedings would begin. I also called a security company and had discreet cameras installed throughout the townhouse, the one my parents owned, where Robert and Diane lived. Small, almost invisible, strategically placed in the living room, kitchen, office, and patio. All included audio, all connected to an app on my phone. If that was their headquarters, I was going to bug it. Ryan returned from his trip on January 6th. I was home when he arrived, surrounded by suitcases. How was it, honey? How was New Year's? He asked, kissing me on the cheek, acting as if nothing was wrong, as if he hadn't just spent 2 weeks with his pregnant mistress and the family who was conspiring against me. Quiet, I said, forcing a smile. I worked quite a bit, got ahead on some projects. I lied. Did you have time to look at that paperwork? There it was. The question I knew was coming. I smiled, brighter this time. Oh, yes. Actually, honey, you don't have to worry about that anymore. I've sorted it all out. I watched his expression change. What do you mean, you sorted it out? I hired a property management company to take care of the apartments, I said breezily. That way, you can focus entirely on your trading without worrying about the hassle of managing rents, contracts, all that bureaucratic stuff. I thought you'd be pleased. You'll have more time to invest in your work. The silence that followed was deafening. Ryan blinked several times, as if processing too much information at once. But I like taking care of the apartments. You don't need to pay someone to do a job I can do myself. I maintained the smile. I know, honey, but you always say you want to grow as an analyst, that you need more time to study the market. Now you have that time. Didn't you like the idea? I saw panic in his eyes. He opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. Yes, he finally said. I liked it. It was just a little sudden. Oh, you know me, I laughed. When I decide something, I make it happen fast. I knew you'd like the surprise, honey. He didn't respond. He just forced a smile. He grabbed his phone and left the living room, muttering something I couldn't understand. I waited a moment, and then opened the camera app on my phone. I activated the patio camera and put on my headphones. There he was, pacing nervously, furiously typing on his phone. His phone rang a few seconds later. Even from a distance, I could hear shouting on the other end of the line. Calm down. Calm down, Ryan was saying, nervously looking back to make sure I wasn't nearby. I don't know what happened. She hired a property management company. No, I can't do anything right now. No, I don't have $3,000 to pay the rent. Chloe, listen. I won't have any cash flow for a while. I need to figure this out first. He hung up the phone, his rage palpable. I turned off the camera and smiled. That night at dinner, I casually mentioned, "Oh, my boss called me earlier. I have to take a last-minute trip to Singapore. An important project. They need someone to go close the contract in person. I'll be gone all week." "When are you leaving?" Ryan asked, trying to sound disinterested. But his eyes were sharp. "The flight is scheduled for 2 a.m. I'll leave the house around 11 p.m. or so. Sorry for the short notice. You know how this job is." "It's fine," he replied too quickly. "I thought we'd spend some time together. But if it's for work, you have to go." After dinner, I went to the dressing room and grabbed my jewelry box to put it in the safe. That's when I noticed jewelry was missing. Several pieces. A pearl necklace that belonged to my grandmother. Diamond earrings my parents gave me for my 16th birthday. A gold bracelet with my mother's precious stone charms. A sapphire necklace my father had given my mother for an anniversary. My blood boiled. It wasn't enough to steal my income. He had stolen my family memories. But I didn't have time to deal with that now. I went into the office, opened the safe where I kept all the important documents, and changed the combination. I stored the remaining jewelry, locked it, and left. I packed a suitcase and said goodbye to Ryan with a kiss on the cheek. Just to mess with him, I discreetly pocketed his car keys from the console table in the foyer, tucked them into my purse, and left the house. I didn't go to the airport. I drove to a hotel downtown. I booked a comfortable suite, went up to the room, and finally took a deep breath. I was alone, safe, and fully in control of the situation. An hour after leaving the house, my phone rang. "Do you know where my car keys are?" I feigned surprise. "I don't know, honey. But why do you need the keys at this hour?" "Oh, nothing. I just realized they weren't here on the console table." I interrupted him. "Maybe they fell behind the furniture. Did you look closely?" I heard an irritated sigh on the other end. "I'll take a look. Have a good trip. Love you." I hung up and immediately opened the camera app. The sight of Ryan ransacking the entire house, searching for the keys tucked away in my purse, was almost comical. After 15 minutes of frustrating searching, he grabbed his phone, typed something quickly, and collapsed onto the living room sofa. Half an hour later, my phone notified me that someone was at the front door of the townhouse. I activated the camera and saw 3 people entering. Uncle Robert, Aunt Diane, and Chloe. They sat down at the kitchen table. Ryan looked destroyed. His shoulders slumped. I turned the audio volume to max and put on my headphones. Explain exactly what is going on, Aunt Diane demanded. She hired a property management company, Ryan said. I no longer have access to anything, Chloe's apartment. She received notice too. New contract in a week or eviction. Jax, I don't have money to pay the rent. Chloe said, a hand on her belly. Sort it out? How? Uncle Robert spat. Years of planning. Years taking care of that girl. And you let it slip away. Because you rushed her with that stupid power of attorney, Aunt Diane shouted. More trust? I've known her since birth. Chloe nervously fiddled with the necklace she was wearing, my sapphire necklace. My mother's necklace. So, now what? She asked. I'm going to try to convince her to sign the POA. Ryan sighed. It's the only way. Aunt Diane leaned forward. We did not take care of that child all these years just to end up with nothing. I didn't endure that brat crying about her dead parents for free. My stomach turned. That company should have been ours too, Uncle Robert muttered. Half of that money, half of those properties. But her father got greedy and bought my share when the company was doing badly. He kept all the profits and then died, leaving everything to that spoiled kid. And now what about us? Chloe asked. How are you going to support me? Support the baby? Ryan ran his hand through his hair, frustrated. I don't know, Chloe. The money I had saved, I lost it gambling. You lost it? Aunt Diane screamed. Ryan, you promised you would quit. You're an idiotic boy, Uncle Robert said. You promised, Chloe cried. I quit my job, I left home, and now you tell me you have no money, that you gambled it all away. Well, you should have thought about that before you got pregnant. Aunt Diane retorted coldly. Finally, Uncle Robert broke the silence. We need a new plan. If Clara won't sign the POA willingly, we'll have to force her somehow. Blackmail? Threats? Something? Blackmail with what? Chloe asked. Her life is perfect. Or, Aunt Diane muttered, we create something, plant some evidence, something that compromises her. Then we offer to fix it in exchange for the signature. I felt nauseous. They were seriously considering framing me. When they finally left, it was nearly 3 a.m. I turned off the camera, my hands shaking. This wasn't just a financial scam. It was a conspiracy spanning over a decade. When 7 a.m. arrived, I picked up the phone and called Mr. Davies. Mr. Davies, I said, my voice shaking with rage, not fear. I have everything recorded. The full confession. Are you safe? Mr. Davies's voice was sharp, instantly alert. Yes, I said, my voice steady. I'm in a hotel downtown. They don't know where I am. They think I'm on my way to Singapore. Send me the recordings right now, he commanded. Every file. And come to my office this afternoon. We are going to end this, Clara. Once and for all. At 2 p.m., I was back in his office. The scent of old paper and coffee feeling like the only sane thing left in the world. He had already reviewed the main recordings. His face was serious, his jaw tight with a cold fury that mirrored my own. Clara, this is much worse than we imagined, he began, opening a thick folder on the table. But it's also much better for your case. While you were away, the detective I hired finished his investigation. We have concrete proof of everything. He turned his laptop towards me. First, your husband is a severe gambling addict. On the screen were bank statements. Meticulous records of rents diverted from my properties into Ryan's personal account for 5 years. And then, the outflows. Bank statements show excessive spending on online betting, casinos, and high-risk gambling websites. His day trading was just a cover for a massive gambling habit. He's lost hundreds of thousands. My stomach churned, but it wasn't a surprise. I had heard him confess it on the recording. There's more, he continued, opening another tab. The trips to the Bahamas were all a lie. The detective had obtained flight and hotel booking records in all 4 of their names. Every year, the 4 of them, Ryan, Chloe, Uncle Robert, and Aunt Diane, went to a luxury resort in the Bahamas. Not to visit relatives. They were a cozy foursome on a lavish vacation. Airline tickets, 5-star hotels, spa treatments, all paid with credit cards linked to the account where your rental income was deposited. He showed me the documents, reservation confirmations, credit card statements, plane tickets, all in their names, all paid with my money. The dates matched perfectly, between December 25th and January 6th, for the last 5 years, while I stayed in Chicago working, believing they were visiting family. They were partying with my money. And finally, he said, his voice softening, "Chloe, as we suspected, she has been living rent-free in your other apartment for the last 18 months. Ryan falsified the lease agreement, claiming a tenant who never existed." He leaned back in his chair, his expression grim. "So, what do we do now?" "Now," I said, the words tasting like iron, "we legally destroy them." "Good." He nodded, a fierce glint in his eyes. "Here is the plan. First, immediate divorce on grounds of adultery and fraud. With this evidence, Ryan gets not a penny. Second, we evict Robert and Diane from your townhouse. They have 30 days. Third, we file a civil suit for misappropriation for all the diverted money. We can prove at least $310,000 plus damages. Fourth, we file a theft charge for the jewelry. That sapphire necklace Chloe was wearing in your house is damning evidence." He paused. "We can even consider the criminal avenue. Conspiracy, fraud. This is more than a family dispute, Clara. This is a long con." "Let's do it," I replied without hesitation. "All of it." "Excellent. I will start preparing all the documentation. Everything will be ready to file with the court tomorrow morning." He then looked at me. "One more thing. You have cameras in the townhouse. I suggest you install a similar system in your own apartment. For your safety, and to document any potential removal of assets or further proof of infidelity. Get it done today." I agreed. I spent 3 days in the hotel, monitoring every movement. I had the security team install cameras in my apartment while Ryan was out. It was shockingly easy. He and Chloe were growing increasingly comfortable. She had practically moved in, her things scattered around the house. They behaved like a couple in every corner, the living room, the kitchen, my bedroom, every space profaned by their betrayal. On the 3rd day's afternoon, watching another deplorable scene through the living room camera, I had an idea. I already had all the evidence I needed. The recordings, the bank statements, the P.I. report. It was more than enough. But there was one thing I wanted to see in person, something that had to happen to make my plan even better. I needed to catch Ryan red-handed. And I needed Aunt Diane and Uncle Robert to find out from me. I waited for the right moment. On my phone screen, I saw Ryan and Chloe settle onto the living room sofa, drinking my wine, laughing at something on his phone. They were completely relaxed. Perfect. I grabbed my keys and left the hotel. Chapter 6. The curtain rises. My apartment was 10 minutes away. Throughout the drive, my heart beat fast. Not from nervousness, but from a strange mix of cold rage and anticipated satisfaction. I parked in the building's garage. I took the elevator up. I walked down the hall to my door. I took a deep breath. I glanced one last time at my phone. They were still there. I opened the door. The scene I found was exactly what I expected. But still, seeing it in person was different from watching it through a screen. Ryan and Chloe were on the sofa. She was sitting on his lap, wearing one of my silk nightgowns. They were kissing, his hands tracing her body with the familiarity of someone who had been doing it for years. The sound of the door opening made them separate immediately. Ryan turned his head and went white. Literally white. All the blood drained from his face in 2 seconds. "Clara!" he yelled, pushing Chloe aside and jumping up. "You? Singapore? You shouldn't be." Chloe covered herself with a blanket, her eyes wide with panic. I stood in the doorway, observing both of them. I didn't say anything. I just watched. "Clara, please, let me explain," Ryan began, taking steps toward me. "This isn't what it looks like." Chloe was. She needed a place to stay. "I want a divorce." I cut him off. My voice came out firmer and calmer than I expected. He stopped, blinking several times. What? Divorce? You cheated on me. In our apartment. With your ex-girlfriend. Of course I want a divorce. I watched the panic in his eyes be replaced by something more calculated. He was thinking, processing, trying to find an angle. Clara, let's talk calmly, he began, switching his strategy to a softer voice. You're angry? I get it. But there is nothing to talk about. I want you both out of my apartment. Now. Chloe stood up, still clutching the blanket. I'm so sorry, Clara. Shut up, I said without looking at her. You owe me no apology. You owe me nothing. Just get out of my house. Ryan took a step forward. And for the first time, I saw something dangerous in his eyes, an arrogance he had always hidden. Well, you won't be able to prove infidelity, he said in a low, firm voice. And even if you do, you'll have to pay me alimony and give me half your assets, including this apartment. Good luck with the divorce, Clara. I smiled. I couldn't help it. A small, genuine smile. We'll see, I simply replied. And I left. I heard Ryan calling after me in the hall, but I didn't look back. I got into the elevator, the doors closed, and finally, I let the smile widen. He really thought I had no proof, that I had stumbled upon it by chance just now. He thought I was stupid enough to not know that inheritance is separate property. Back in the car, I grabbed my phone and dialed Aunt Diane's number. She answered on the second ring, her voice cheerful. Clara, dear, how was Singapore? I let my voice tremble, as if I were crying. Aunt Diane, I came back early. I caught Ryan. With another woman. Silence on the other end. What? She finally said. And by the tone, I knew the surprise was genuine. How? With another woman. Here. In our apartment, I replied, putting all the pain I could muster into my voice. She was here. They were together. And she's pregnant. Aunt Diane. Oh my God, she murmured. I heard her take a deep breath. Clara, honey, where are you? And there was something in her voice. Not concern. Calculation. I'm in the car. In the building garage. I can't go back into that apartment. Not now. Come here, she said, too quickly. Come to the townhouse. We'll talk. We'll fix this. I don't know, I sobbed. I have to call a lawyer. I'm filing for divorce. Clara, you don't have to be so drastic, she insisted. Let's talk. Maybe he cheated on me, Aunt Diane. I cut her off, putting firmness in my voice. In our home, there is no conversation that fixes this. You're right, she said after a moment, switching tactics. You're absolutely right. Leave it to me. I'm going to talk to him. That boy is going to hear it. Thank you, I whispered, and hung up. I allowed myself to smile again. Now, all that was left was to wait for the show to begin. It didn't take a minute. I opened the camera app for my apartment. I saw Ryan's phone ring. He looked at the screen, and his face became even paler. It's my mom, he told Chloe, who was frantically gathering her things. He answered and immediately pulled the phone away from his ear. Even through the camera, I could hear Aunt Diane screaming. Are you stupid or just acting like it? How could you let her catch you? In the apartment. With Chloe. Can't you think with your upper head for 5 seconds? Mom, calm down. I can explain. Ryan tried to respond, but she wouldn't let him. Explain what? Years, Ryan. Years of planning. Years taking care of that girl. Earning her trust. Building everything brick by brick. And you mess it all up because you can't keep your pants on. I had never heard Aunt Diane scream like that. The mask of the polite, kind woman had completely dropped. She has no proof, he tried. She caught you in the apartment with your pregnant mistress, you idiot. What clearer proof do you want? I heard Uncle Robert's voice. Aunt Diane must have put him on speakerphone. You are an idiot, Uncle Robert said with a chilling calm. A complete and utter fool. We trusted you. We gave you one single task. Marry her, earn her trust, make her sign the power of attorney, and you couldn't even manage that. But I'll make her drop the divorce, Ryan insisted. She'll still have to give me half the assets in the divorce. Even with adultery. It's divided. Aunt Diane let out a bitter laugh. You really are dumb. Those properties are her inheritance. They don't enter into the split. She's divorcing you. You'll be left with nothing. And a pregnant mistress to support on top of it. Congratulations, Ryan. You managed to ruin everything. I saw Ryan slump heavily onto the sofa, phone still to his ear, his face in his hands. Can you come here? He asked in a weak voice. We need to do something. We need a plan. No, Aunt Diane said flatly. You got yourself into this mess alone. Now get yourself out of it alone. I'm fed up, Ryan. Fed up with you. And she hung up. Ryan sat there, staring at the phone. Chloe tried to approach, but he pushed her away. You need to leave, he told her coldly. Chloe, now. And don't come back. But Ryan, I have nowhere to go. That is not my problem now, he shouted, standing up. Go to your parents. Go wherever you want, but get out of here. I watched Chloe start crying, hurriedly gathering her things, almost running out of the apartment. Ryan was left alone in the living room, pacing back and forth, picking up his phone, typing something, deleting it, typing again. He was sending me messages. I saw the notifications pop up on my phone. Clara, please let me explain. It was a mistake. I love you. Can we fix this? I deleted all the messages without responding. I turned off the cameras and leaned back in the car seat. Phase 1 complete. Now all that was left was to wait for tomorrow. The next morning, I woke up early in the hotel. I had already asked Mr. Davies to prepare everything for delivery that day. Promptly, at 8 a.m., 2 court officers split up. One went to the townhouse on Lake Shore Drive, where Uncle Robert and Aunt Diane lived. The other went to my apartment, where Ryan was. I was in Mr. Davies's office, sipping a strong hot coffee, when my phone rang. It was Aunt Diane. I let it ring twice, took a breath, and answered. Clara! She screamed. There was panic in her voice now. None of the contained rage from yesterday. This was the pure, unfiltered terror of a cornered animal. What is this? An eviction notice? You're kicking us out of our home? Yes, I replied simply. But why? What have we done? Clara, we can talk this out, please. This is because of what Ryan did, isn't it? We have nothing to do with that. We are just as surprised as you are, that idiotic boy. She almost laughed. Nothing to do with it? Seriously? Nothing to do with it? Of course not. We love you, Clara. Aunt Diane, I interrupted, my voice turning to ice. I know everything. Absolute silence on the other end. The panicked breathing stopped. I know, I continued, about the trips that weren't to the Bahamas. I know about the diverted rents for the last 5 years. I know about the plan you had since my parents' death. I know about Ryan's gambling, and how you covered for him. I know, and here I let my voice drop, that you didn't endure that brat crying about her dead parents for free. The silence that followed was heavier, more profound than any sound. I had just repeated her own words back to her. I heard a sharp intake of breath, like she'd been physically struck. So, yes, I continued into the void. You have 30 days to get out of my house. And I suggest you use that time to find a good lawyer. Because you are also being sued for conspiracy and misappropriation of $310,000, you're going to need one. I hung up before she could respond. 2 minutes later, my phone rang again. Ryan, I answered. Clara, is this serious? He asked. And there was something different in his voice. Fear, divorce, misappropriation, theft. You're suing me? You're accusing me of theft? Yes. But why those accusations? You don't have proof of all that, do you? Yes, Ryan, I though. What proof? How? He sputtered. You can't prove any of that. Security cameras, I said calmly. Throughout the apartment, and throughout the townhouse. With audio, they've been installed for days. I have the recording of you with Chloe yesterday, while I was supposedly in Singapore. I have the recording of the meeting in the kitchen, where you all confessed the entire plan. I have the documents from the private investigator proving the diversion of money, the bank statements of your gambling losses, The fake trips to the Bahamas. The falsified lease on Chloe's apartment. I have everything. Silence. Then, a choked sound. You recorded us? I recorded you. And I've handed it all over to my legal team. But that's illegal, he shouted, grasping. You can't record people without their consent. Yes, I can, I said. In my own property. With my own security cameras. It's perfectly legal. Mr. Davies made sure of that. It's called protecting my assets. I heard him breathe heavily on the other end. How much do you want? He finally asked, the plea entering his voice. How much do you want to forget everything? To drop the lawsuits? $10,000? $20,000? How much? This time. I genuinely laughed. Ryan, do you really think I want money? I have money. What I want is justice. And my assets back. Your assets were never not yours. No? And the $310,000 you diverted from the rents over 5 years? And my grandmother's pearl necklace? My mother's sapphire necklace that your mistress was wearing? The years of lies? I'll give it all back to you, he pleaded, his voice cracking. With interest. Just drop the lawsuits. Please, Clara. This will destroy me. It will destroy my parents. All of us. Do one. You should have thought about that before. Are you doing this for revenge? Because I cheated on you? I already apologized. No, Ryan, I said, my voice flat and final. I'm doing this because you spent over a decade planning a scam against me. Because you exploited my parents' death. You exploited my vulnerability. My trust. Because you are exactly the kind of person who deserves to pay for their crimes. Crimes? I just made bad decisions with our money. It's the risk of the business. You diverted money, you falsified contracts, you stole jewelry, you committed fraud. Those are felonies, Ryan. And you will answer for them. I heard him start to cry on the other end. Not that manipulative crying he would probably use if we were face to face. It was a cry of genuine, abject desperation. Please, he begged. I'm going to lose everything. I'll have nothing. Welcome to the club, I replied coldly. You were going to leave me with nothing too. The difference is that I was smarter and discovered it first. I heard him swallow. My parents are going to kill me. They're going to kill me for letting this happen. They're going to blame me for everything. That I messed up their plan. That I was stupid. Careless. And weren't you? I cut him off. You were stupid and careless. You let yourself get caught with your mistress. I didn't know you would come back early. I'm not just talking about yesterday, Ryan. I'm also talking about Christmas Eve. When you announced Chloe's pregnancy to the entire room. When your parents talked about finally reclaiming what is rightfully theirs. When everyone toasted the future. Absolute dead silence on the other end. His breathing stopped. You were there? His voice was a thread. Yes, I also arrived early from the company party. I heard everything. I saw everything. And I left before anyone noticed. But you sent me a message later saying you were at the company party? Because I needed time, Ryan. Time to process. Time to plan. Time to gather evidence. You all thought I would be eternally stupid, eternally grateful, eternally blind, and I let you believe it. While I prepared, another silence, longer, heavier. So, since Christmas, he murmured, as if processing it. You knew, since Christmas. The trip to Singapore, the cameras, it was all planned. The Singapore's all planned. Yes, I said. But you destroyed yourselves. I'm just making sure you pay the consequences. And I hung up. I looked at Mr. Davies, who had followed the entire conversation, a grim smile on his face. How do you feel? He asked. I thought for a moment. Free, I finally replied. I feel free. He smiled. Your father would be proud. Chapter 8. The Fallen House. It took 2 months for everything to resolve. The divorce was fast because Ryan had no way to fight. With all the evidence, the audio recordings, the financial trail, the P.I. report, the photos of my jewelry on his mistress, his lawyer practically begged him to sign everything without opposing it. "It's the only way out, son," I heard the guy say in the courthouse hallway. "You take this to trial, and you'll be facing criminal charges." I watched Ryan sign the papers. His hand trembled so much the pen nearly fell. He couldn't look me in the eye even once. I left there officially divorced. Officially the owner of everything that was always mine. The judgment for misappropriation came shortly after. $310,000 to be repaid. Aside from the jewelry, which was returned, the judge determined a 30% wage garnishment. Only, Ryan had never had a real salary. He had never truly worked in his life. "I suggest the defendant get a real job." The prosecutor almost laughed. And that's what happened. A few weeks later, Mr. Davies told me that Ryan had finally found a job, a barista at a downtown cafe chain. For the first time in his adult life, he was genuinely working. Waking up early, wearing a uniform, serving customers, cleaning tables. The same guy who spent his days pretending to study charts in front of the computer, who lectured me about strategic investments, was now finally doing something productive for minimum wage. Uncle Robert and Aunt Diane had 30 days to leave the townhouse. On the last day, I went to conduct the inspection with the court officer and Mr. Davies. I expected it to be messy. I did not expect complete vandalism. They had destroyed everything they could before leaving. Furniture my parents had owned was smashed. Holes were punched in the walls. They had spray-painted insults "spoiled brat," "Eve," on the antique wallpaper. My mother's favorite mirror in the foyer was shattered on the floor. Uncle Robert was waiting for me at the door, glaring. "Satisfied?" he spat. "Of course not. Look at this damage. This is criminal. We have nowhere to go." Aunt Diane appeared behind him, her face puffy from crying. "We're old. We have no money. You took everything from us." "I took back what was always mine," I said, my voice echoing in the ruined foyer. "You are the ones who spent years pretending it was yours. Your father robbed us." Uncle Robert took a step toward me, his face purple with rage. "That money was ours. He tricked me." The officer stepped between us. "My father bought your share," I said, my voice never rising. "You chose to cash out. It wasn't his fault you gave up too soon. And it's certainly not mine. You'll regret this," Aunt Diane hissed. "I won't," I said, looking around at the wreckage of my childhood home. "But you will. Every single day." I turned around and walked away. I had the entire townhouse renovated. It took over a month, but it looked beautiful. I sold it in 2 weeks, to a couple with 2 young children. They were radiant, making plans about how they would decorate each room, about the birthday party they would hold in the garden. I hope they are happy there. That house deserved good stories. I also sold the apartment where I lived with Ryan. I couldn't have gone back inside. I hired people to empty everything, remodel it, and sold it furnished. Of the 4 properties I inherited, I kept only the 2 apartments that had always been rented. I left everything in the hands of the management company. I kept getting updates from Mr. Davies. Ryan and Chloe broke up. She never forgave him for kicking her out that night. Pregnant, homeless, and terrified. The humiliation, the desperation, the coldness with which he threw her out, all of it killed whatever existed between them. Chloe made peace with her parents and moved back home. They welcomed her, happy to have their daughter and the grandchild on the way. Even under the difficult circumstances, Ryan, on the other hand, was completely alone. He had cut ties with his parents after everything that happened. The accusations, the screaming, the insults they exchanged when they realized they had lost everything were irreversible. Robert and Diane never even got to meet their grandson. Ryan rented a room in a shared apartment in a bad neighborhood. He worked at the cafe. He returned every day to an empty room. He slept alone without Chloe, without his son, without his parents, without anything. Robert and Diane were in a tiny, cramped apartment across town. Robert returned to doing construction side jobs. Despite his age and battered body, Diane found work as a secretary at a pet supply store, earning minimum wage. The family that had planned everything so carefully had shattered, separated, alone, bitter, each blaming the other for the disaster they had created. 3 months after the divorce was finalized, I packed my bags and left Chicago. I had no reason to stay there anymore. I chose Austin, Texas, because it was close enough not to be dramatic, but far enough to be a true new beginning. I bought a small 2-bedroom house with a front yard. Nothing luxurious, nothing extravagant. I painted the walls the colors I liked. I hung photos of my parents, David and Sarah. I planted roses in the garden because my mother loved roses, and hydrangeas because my father said they were the most beautiful. Waking up early and tending to the garden became my favorite routine. Watering, pruning, watching things grow. A slightly obvious metaphor, I know, but it calmed me. Little by little, I started meeting people. The neighbor who makes incredible cookies and always shows up with a fresh batch when she realizes I'm home. The owner of the corner coffee shop who already knows my order by heart. A group that meets to walk in the park every morning. People who knew me as Clara, the one who moved from Chicago and likes gardening. Not as Clara, the one who was nearly destroyed by those who claimed to be her family. It was good to be just myself, without baggage, without explanations. I quit my job as marketing director in Chicago. The firm was disappointed. They offered me a raise, a promotion, anything to make me stay. But I needed distance from everything. I continued working as a consultant for them, but remotely now, on specific projects, when and how I wanted. Nothing that consumed me. I traveled quite a bit. France, Italy, Singapore, this time for real. Experiencing the places, trying the food of each country, taking pictures. Mr. Davies calls me every month. Always the same day. The same time. He tells me silly things about his office. Asks how I am. Sometimes he updates me on some legal matter. Ryan tried to appeal the wage garnishment again. He told me the other day. The judge denied it. That's the 5th time now. We laugh. He is the closest person I have to family today. And yet, there is a part of me that doesn't open up completely to him. That maintains that safe distance. It's been 3 years since that Christmas Eve. I wake up every day in my Austin home. I make coffee. I sit on the porch looking at the garden. The roses are beautiful. The hydrangeas too. I haven't seriously dated anyone in these 3 years. I've gone out with a few people, had pleasant dinners, good conversations, but nothing went past 3 or 4 dates. Last month, a very nice guy, a friend's brother from the walking group, tried to hold my hand. We had been out 3 times. It was going well. I pulled away without thinking. Pure instinct. I'm sorry, I told him. I'm not ready yet. He was super understanding. No pressure. We'll go at your pace. 2 weeks later, he stopped calling. I don't blame him. Nobody wants to wait for someone who might never be ready. And you know, maybe I never will be. Because when you spend years believing you have a family, trusting with your eyes closed, and you discover that everything was a giant lie from day one, something breaks inside you. Now I look at everyone slightly sideways, looking for the trick, the lie, the ulterior motive. It's exhausting. It's lonely. But it keeps me safe. Sometimes I wonder if it's fair to myself, to the people who cross my path, to wear this trauma-like armor against everyone. But then I remember trusting blindly, never doubting, and the price I almost paid. And then I think, okay, maybe it's lonely, but it's safe. And after everything, safety is worth more. What I've learned is that being alone doesn't mean being empty. I fill myself with other things. The books I read on the porch, the trips I take, the garden I plant, the house I decorate to my taste, the friends I have chosen to keep close, even if always at that prudent distance. This morning, having coffee on the porch with a bird singing in the garden tree, I realized something. I am happy, not in the way I imagined when I was younger, without a husband, without children, without that magazine cover, life. But I am happy in my own way, in my own time, on my own terms. Perhaps someday I will trust someone again. Perhaps not. And it's okay if that day never comes. Because the true inheritance my parents, David and Sarah, left me was not the money or the properties. It was the ability to always get back up, no matter how many times I am knocked down. And no one can take that from me. I finish my coffee, look at the flowers, feel the breeze, and smile. Because today, I choose to keep moving forward. And that is enough. And that's it, folks. This has been my story. Thank you for staying with me until the end. If this story resonated with you in any way, please drop a like below. That helps the channel grow and reach more people who need to hear stories like this. Subscribe to the channel too and hit that notification bell, because there are many more stories on the way. And tell me in the comments, would you have done anything differently? Would you have confronted them sooner? Or would you have waited for the right moment like I did? I read all the comments. A big hug to your heart.